The room went silent except for the click of Dylan's pen. He stood at the head of the conference table, smiling that smug smile that never reached his eyes. On the big screen behind him was my project, the scheduling system I'd built from scratch over 6 months of late nights and weekend work. He was announcing it as his team's breakthrough innovation. Then, like it was nothing, he added, "I've decided Colin will take over as lead developer. Natalie, you can support him as needed." My throat went dry. Support him? My system? The system I'd coded line by line, tested until my eyes burned, documented in folders they'd never even opened? The team clapped hesitantly. A few people glanced at me, uncomfortable. Dylan didn't even look my way. He just kept talking about rollout timelines and corporate presentations like I'd suddenly become invisible. My hands gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. 6 months. Gone. Just like that. I felt my face burning hot. I managed a tight smile as everyone avoided my eyes. Colin, slick hair, perfect smile, expensive watch, leaned over and patted my shoulder. "Don't worry, Nat. We'll keep your baby safe." The words stung like acid. My baby. The one I'd stayed up until 3 in the morning building, unpaid overtime, fueled by cold coffee and the belief that hard work mattered. The one I'd pitched to Dylan when he'd said our logistics were a disaster. The one he'd called interesting before stealing it entirely. My hands were shaking under the table, but I folded them neatly in my lap. Professional. Composed. If I spoke now I'd cry. And I refused to give them that satisfaction. So I sat there silent while they carved up my work like it was theirs to distribute. My chest felt tight. My vision blurred at the edges. But I didn't move. As they started discussing next steps, implementation phases, client demos, my mind was screaming. This is my work. My design. My name erased like I'd never existed. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears as Dylan turned to me with that fake concerned expression. "You understand the handover process, right, Natalie? We'll need all your documentation by end of week." That's when I looked him straight in the eye and said, voice steady as steel, "Perfectly." Something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe. Or suspicion. But he nodded and moved on. Around me the meeting continued. People took notes. Colin asked questions about features he didn't understand. And I sat there silent, making a decision that would change everything. They wanted my system? Fine. They could have it. Exactly as it was without me. Let's see how that works out for them. I smiled. A real smile this time. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 29 years old, a logistics coordinator at Swiftline Freight. Not a fancy title. Not impressive at parties. But I'd made myself indispensable over 3 years of solving problems nobody else wanted to touch. Or so I'd thought. The system I'd built was supposed to revolutionize our chaotic delivery network, turning 300 daily routes into an automated, efficient operation. I wasn't even a trained developer. I taught myself to code during lunch breaks, stayed up late watching tutorials, spent my own money on courses. Just a woman who got tired of being told to make do with broken processes. I'd built something real. Something that worked. And they'd taken it from me without a second thought. That night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something. They didn't just take my project. They took my value. My proof. My future. But they'd forgotten one thing. I knew every line of that code. Every function. Every deliberate choice I'd made to keep it stable. And they didn't. The next day my access permissions were quietly changed. I discovered it when I tried to open the source files that morning. Access denied. My chest tightened. I checked again thinking it was a glitch. Nothing. I could view the documentation but I couldn't edit anything. Couldn't touch the code I'd written. Colin sent a friendly email an hour later. "Hey Natalie, just streamlining the development access. You know how IT is about security. We'll take it from here. Thanks for everything." Dylan copied it. So was the VP. "Thanks for your help, Natalie. Excited to see where Colin takes this." Help. Like I'd been an assistant. Like I'd brought coffee and made copies. Not the architect. Not the builder. Just help. I read that email 3 times, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Then I closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and let myself shake for exactly 2 minutes. Then I washed my face, fixed my hair and went back to my desk. Professional. Composed. Invisible. That night, I poured a glass of wine and stared at my monitor at home. My personal folders were still there. My original notes. My backup files. Every version I'd saved before handing anything to Dylan 6 weeks ago. My cursor hovered over the delete key. I could erase it all. Make sure they had nothing to fall back on. But I stopped. Oh. Let them have it. Let them own it. Let them take full credit and full responsibility. I leaned back in my chair, wine glass cold in my hand, and thought about all the shortcuts they'd want to take. All the safety measures they'd call unnecessary. All the warnings they wouldn't listen to because I was just the coordinator who got lucky. They thought code was just words on a screen. They didn't understand it was architecture. But consequences. I saved everything to 3 separate drives. Then I backed it up to the cloud. Evidence. Documentation. Timestamps. Not for revenge. For truth. Then I closed my laptop and slept better than I had in weeks. Every morning after that, I walked past Dylan's office pretending not to hear him laughing with Colin. They had their heads together over printouts of my code, talking loudly about improvements and optimization. She was too emotionally attached to the original design, Dylan said once, his voice carrying into the hallway. He thought I was out of earshot. I wasn't. I kept walking. Steady steps. Calm face. I rehearsed my smiles in the bathroom mirror like armor. Professional smile for meetings. Neutral smile for hallway encounters. Interested smile when Colin explained my own code back to me incorrectly. Each one a mask. Each one a choice. People started treating me differently. Some with pity. Some with relief, like they were glad it wasn't them. Others avoided me entirely, afraid association would mark them too. I became a ghost in my own workplace. And I let it happen. Because ghosts see everything. And nobody notices when they're watching. 2 weeks in, Colin called me over to his desk. He had my code open, 3 monitors full of functions he clearly didn't understand. Hey Nat, quick question. How does the auto-route updater work exactly? It's pulling from 2 databases and I can't figure out the logic. I looked at the screen. At the elegant solution I'd spent a month perfecting. In the comments I'd written explaining every step. It's all in the documentation, I said calmly. You did read it, right? He laughed. That confident, dismissive laugh. Yeah. I skimmed it. But you know how documentation is. Never as clear as just asking the person who wrote it. I smiled. I'm sure you'll figure it out. His smile faltered. Come on, Nat, don't be like that. I tilted my head. Like what? You're the lead developer now. I'm just support. Remember. I walked away before he could respond. Behind me, I heard him mutter something to another developer. That's the moment I knew with absolute certainty. He wouldn't figure it out. None of them would. They started rewriting my code to make it simpler. I watched from my desk as they removed safety checks and error handling I'd spent weeks perfecting. Functions I'd built to catch edge cases got deleted because they looked redundant. We're streamlining it, Colin announced proudly in a team meeting. Cutting the fat. Making it lean and fast. I raised my hand. Those functions handle overflow conditions when the server load spikes. Without them, the system will crash under heavy traffic. Dylan cut in. We've tested it, Natalie. It's fine. You were just being overly cautious. Overly cautious. The words hung in the air. I nodded slowly. My mistake. I offered a few more quiet warnings over the next week. Suggestions about backup protocols. Concerns about the database sync timing. Each time I was waved off. We've got it handled, Natalie. Trust the process. Let the developers develop. So I stopped offering. I stopped trying to save them from themselves. And I started counting down the days until launch. The company VP visited on a Thursday. Dylan rolled out the red carpet literally. There was catered lunch and a full presentation in the main conference room. I sat in the back, hands folded, while Dylan took credit for the system's progress. He promised an early rollout. Showed projections of efficiency gains and cost savings. The VP ate it up. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need, she said, beaming. Dylan, this could mean big things for your career. My stomach turned. Colin beamed beside him, already imagining his promotion. Other team members nodded along, playing their parts. And I sat there, silent, nails digging into my palm under the table. When the VP asked if there were any concerns, Dylan said, none at all. We're ahead of schedule and under budget. This team has really pulled together. He didn't even glance my way. I clapped with everyone else when the presentation ended. Professional. Composed. Waiting. That night I opened my private backup drives. Every line of original code. Every development note. Every email where I'd explained design decisions. Every timestamp proving when features were created and by whom. I organized it all into folders. Clear labels. Chronological order. Evidence of ownership. Proof of competence. Documentation of warnings ignored. I didn't plan revenge. Revenge was emotional, messy, unpredictable. I planned something better. Truth. Facts. The kind that couldn't be argued with. I created a simple document. A timeline of the project from conception to takeover. My name on every milestone. My solutions to every problem. Their changes marked in red, dated, sourced. I saved it with the title, System Development History and Brooks. Then I saved it to 4 different locations. I didn't know when I'd need it. But I knew I would. And when that moment came, I'd be ready. I closed my laptop and smiled in the darkness of my apartment. They'd taken my project. But they couldn't take my preparation. The launch date was set for Monday morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Full company rollout. All 300 routes switching to the new system simultaneously. Dylan was practically glowing with anticipation. If this works, we're talking promotions all around, he announced Friday afternoon, already celebrating. This is going to put Swiftline on the map. Colin high-fived him. Other team members cheered. Someone brought champagne for a pre-celebration toast. I raised my plastic cup with everyone else. Then let's hope it works, I said softly. Dylan heard me, turned, looked at me with something like suspicion. It will work. We've tested it thoroughly. I smiled. Of course. But something in my tone made him pause. Made Colin's smile slip. Made the room feel suddenly colder. The celebration continued, but I noticed Dylan watching me for the rest of the afternoon. Like he was finally starting to wonder. What does she know that we don't? Everything, Dylan. I know everything. Friday night I stayed late finishing reports. The office was mostly empty. That's when I heard Colin on a late call, his voice rising in panic. It's not updating routes. The test data's looping. It's pulling yesterday's information. Through the cubicle wall I heard Dylan hiss, fix it before Monday. I don't care how. The VP is coming to watch the launch. I don't understand why it's doing this. The code looks fine. Then make it work. Pull an all-nighter if you have to. This cannot fail. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately making noise so they'd know I was there. I walked past Dylan's office. He was on his computer, tie loose, face red. Colin was beside him, typing frantically. They both looked up. Saw me. Still here, Natalie? Dylan's voice was tight. Just finishing up. Good luck with the launch. I smiled pleasantly and walked away. Behind me I heard Colin whisper urgently. I heard keyboards clicking desperately. And I kept walking steady and calm out into the parking lot, into my car, into the weekend. 2 days until launch. 2 days until truth. Monday morning arrived with confetti on desks. Pastries in the break room. The VP came early with 2 corporate visitors. Dylan wore a new suit. Colin had styled his hair differently. The energy was electric, nervous, performative. I arrived exactly on time, carrying coffee, dressed professionally but not celebrating. Nobody seemed to notice. They were too busy preparing for the big moment. 8 a.m. rolled around. Dylan gave a short speech. Today we revolutionize how Swiftline operates. This system represents months of hard work and innovation. Let's make history. He pressed the button. The system went live. For the first few minutes, everything ran fine. Routes appeared on screens. Trucks received their assignments. The dashboard glowed green. Dylan exhaled with visible relief. Colin grinned. The VP nodded approvingly. I sipped my coffee quietly, sitting at my desk in the back watching the monitors. Waiting. Because I knew exactly what they'd removed. I knew which safety checks were gone. And I knew what happened when those conditions triggered. The first alert popped up at 8:17 a.m. It started small. A few missed routes on the Eastern District Board. Someone laughed nervously. Just a little lag. Systems adjusting. Then the dashboard froze. Updates stopped. Refresh did nothing. Colin's face drained of color. He clicked furiously, keyboard rattling. It's fine. Just a temporary glitch. Happens with new systems. But the room was going tense. Quiet. The VP leaned forward. How long until it's resolved? Any second, Dylan said quickly. But it wasn't any second. The errors multiplied. Red alerts spread across the screen like infection. Routes disappeared. Assignments duplicated. The whole board went blank, then filled with error codes. I knew that pattern. I'd seen it in testing when I deliberately triggered overflow conditions. That's why I'd built the safety checks they'd deleted. I took another sip of coffee. My hands were perfectly steady. Around me, panic was starting to bloom. Phones began ringing. Warehouse managers calling in. Drivers stranded without assignments. Orders vanishing from the system. And nobody knew how to stop it. Within an hour, everything stopped completely. Trucks stalled mid-route without destination updates. Orders disappeared into digital nowhere. Customer service was flooded with calls. Phones rang non-stop across the office. Dylan started barking orders, his confident facade cracking. Restart it. Reboot the servers. Roll it back to the previous version. Someone from IT yelled back, "We can't. The restore points are corrupted. They were overwritten during the last update." Colin's hands were shaking as he typed. "I don't understand. This worked in testing." "Testing with 50 routes," I said quietly. Everyone turned. "You tested with 50 routes. We have 300 running simultaneously. The system can't handle the concurrent database calls without the load balancing functions." Dead silence. Dylan's face went from red to white. "What functions?" I looked at him directly. "The ones Colin removed last week because they seemed redundant." The VP stood. "Someone explain what's happening right now." Dylan opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. Just the sound of phones ringing. Alarms beeping. And 300 routes collapsing in real time. Dylan rounded on me suddenly. "What did you do?" His voice was sharp, accusing. Desperate. The whole room turned to stare. I tilted my head calmly. "I wasn't part of this version, remember? You took me off the project 2 weeks ago." My voice was steady. Quiet. Matter of fact. He froze. The team stared. The silence burned hotter than any yelling could. "You must have done something," Colin said, voice shaking. "This is sabotage." I laughed. Actually laughed. Sabotage? I haven't touched the code in 2 weeks. I don't even have access anymore. You changed my permissions, remember? I pulled out my phone, opened my email. Here's the message. From you, Colin. Quote, "We'll take it from here." End quote. I turned to Dylan. "And here's yours. Thanks for your help, Natalie." I emphasized the word help. "You wanted to run this without me. So you are. This is all you." The VP's eyes narrowed. "Dylan, is this true?" He couldn't speak. Just stood there drowning. And I watched, calm and silent, as the weight of his decisions finally crushed him. Corporate stormed in 20 minutes later. 3 executives I'd never seen, faces like stone. Colin's voice shook as he tried to explain the technical failures. The VP demanded logs, notes, anything that could explain the disaster. Dylan swore he could fix it, voice rising desperately. "Give me 6 hours. We'll have it running by end of day." But then IT pulled the audit trail. Every code change logged and timestamped. Every function deleted. Every warning ignored. My name appeared on the original design files. Every major feature marked with my ID and dates from months ago. Then line by line the recent changes. Colin's edits removing error handling. Dylan's approval on the updates. My emails warning about overflow risks, marked as read but never answered. The IT manager read it aloud, voice flat. Security checks removed. Database sync timing altered. Load balancing functions deleted. All changes made in the last 2 weeks by user C. Morrison. "Colin." The VP turned slowly. "You ignored her warnings?" Colin's voice cracked. "She didn't say it was critical. She was just being difficult because we took over her project." I met his eyes. "I told you the system would crash under heavy traffic without those functions. You said I was being overly cautious." The words landed like a hammer. Dylan's face drained of all color as the VP read the audit trail aloud. Every deletion. Every ignored warning. Every timestamp proving incompetence and ego over caution. You removed critical safety features? Her voice was ice. Dylan tried to speak. We were optimizing. Making it more efficient. She was over-engineering everything. Over-engineering. I spoke quietly. Everyone turned. I built redundancy because I knew what would happen without it. You removed it because you didn't understand it. The room was silent except for the still ringing phones. Customer complaints pouring in. Losses mounting by the minute. How long to fix this? The VP asked. Colin looked at his screen helplessly. I don't know. I'd have to rebuild the functions we removed, but I don't know how they worked exactly. They were documented, I said. In the files you said you'd read. His face went red. This isn't fair. We were just trying to improve it. You were trying to take credit for it, I corrected. There's a difference. The VP closed her laptop. Pack up your things, Dylan. Colin. HR will be in touch within the hour. Dylan stood frozen. You can't do this. I've been here 8 years. And in one morning you've cost us more than those 8 years earned. Leave. Now. No one spoke as Dylan and Colin gathered their belongings. Phones still rang unanswered. Orders still missing. The system still crashed. Other team members stared at their screens, afraid to move, afraid to be next. The corporate executives watched Dylan leave, his box of desk items clutched against his chest. Colin followed, eyes red. He didn't look at anyone. When the door closed behind them, the VP turned to the room. Who can fix this? Silence. Fear. Everyone looked at each other, then slowly, inevitably at me. I took a sip of my coffee. Let the moment stretch. Natalie, the VP said carefully. Can you restore the system? I considered her. Considered them. Considered all the late nights I'd spent building something they'd broken in 2 weeks. Yes, I said finally. But it'll take time. I have to rebuild everything they deleted. How long? 72 hours. Maybe more. She nodded. Do it. Whatever you need. I stood slowly. I'll need full access restored. Administrative permissions. And I work alone. He didn't hesitate. Done. I walked to my desk. Logged in. Watched my permissions update in real time. And then I started typing. Around me the office held its breath. Later that day, after the VP had made her emergency calls and the crisis team had assembled, she called me into her office. Natalie, we're formally reinstating you as project lead. With a title change. Senior Systems Developer. And a raise effective immediately. I nodded slowly. I didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Just met her eyes. I'll rebuild it right this time. My way. No interference. You have full authority, she said. Then she paused. Why didn't you fight harder when Dylan took over? I thought about that. Because fighting wouldn't have proven anything. This did. She studied me for a long moment. You knew it would fail. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She nodded. Rebuild it. Properly. And Natalie? Next time someone tries to take credit for your work, come to me first. Will you listen? I asked. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. I will now. I left her office and went back to my desk. The office was quieter now. People watched me differently. Not with pity anymore. With something else. Respect. Maybe fear. I didn't care which. I opened my backup files and started rebuilding what they'd destroyed. I stayed late that night. The office emptied slowly around me. People left with quiet goodbyes and careful glances. I barely noticed. My fingers moved across the keyboard, muscle memory and focus taking over. Rebuilding the safety checks. Restoring the error handling. Rewriting the database sync logic they'd butchered. Clean code. Efficient code. Safe code. My way. The building went silent. Just the hum of computers and the click of my keyboard. I ordered food delivered. Ate at my desk without stopping. At midnight I tested the first module. It worked. By 3 a.m. I had half the system operational. By dawn I was exhausted but the core functions were restored. I saved everything. Backed it up. Documented every change with notes explaining why each piece mattered. This time there would be no confusion. No shortcuts. No room for someone else to break what I'd built. Around 6 a.m. the sun started rising. I watched it through the office windows, light spreading across empty desks. For the first time in weeks I breathed easy. This was mine again. And I'd make sure it stayed that way. The rumors spread fast. By Tuesday afternoon everyone knew. Dylan terminated for gross negligence. Colin resigned before he could be fired, citing stress and personal reasons. The story leaked beyond our company. Industry contacts started calling. Dylan's name appeared on forums, LinkedIn whispers, quiet warnings. Manager negligence causes logistics meltdown. Executive fired after system failure costs millions. His career was over. Colin disappeared from professional networks entirely. I felt strange about it. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Just a quiet, settled peace. They'd made choices. Choices based on ego, on taking shortcuts, on dismissing expertise they didn't understand. Consequences followed. That wasn't my doing. That was just truth catching up. By Wednesday the system was fully operational again. Better than before. I'd added new features, improved efficiency, built-in monitoring tools. The VP presented it to corporate with me standing beside her. My name on the slides. My title accurate. My work acknowledged. People clapped. This time I smiled. A real smile. 3 months later the system ran flawlessly. 0 crashes. 0 errors. Efficiency up 37%. Cost savings exceeding projections. I was promoted officially. Not just in title but in recognition. Senior systems developer with a team of 3 reporting to me. People I'd chosen. People who listened. I got my own office. Small but mine. My name on the door. Business cards with the correct title. Respect in meetings. Coworkers treated me differently now. Not as the helpful coordinator who got lucky. As the architect. The expert. The person who'd built the foundation they all stood on. New hires were told my story, whispered in break rooms. That's Natalie. She built our entire routing system. Don't mess with her code. I hired carefully. Trained thoroughly. Documented everything. And I made sure every person who touched my system understood not just the what but the why. One afternoon a junior developer asked me, "Is it true your old manager tried to take credit for all this?" I smiled. Yes. But systems don't lie. Eventually the truth comes out. She nodded, eyes wide. I'll remember that. One evening months later I was leaving the office when I passed Dylan's old desk. His nameplate was gone. The chair pushed in neatly. A new person sat there now, someone from accounting. I stopped for just a moment looking at the empty space where he used to sit. Where he used to laugh. Where he used to take credit. I thought about him sometimes. Wondered where he ended up. If he learned anything. If he ever admitted even to himself what he'd done wrong. Then I thought about Colin, his panic when the system crashed, his desperate attempts to fix what he'd broken. I felt no anger anymore. No bitterness. Just a quiet understanding that some lessons cost everything. I adjusted my bag and headed for the door. Behind me my office light was still on, my name visible on the frosted glass. Natalie Brooks. Senior Systems Developer. I whispered to the empty hallway to no one in particular. Funny how systems fail when you remove the person who built them. Then I walked out into the evening air, head high, knowing this time I'd never let anyone steal my work again. Because now everyone knew why.